ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال وبنين وجعلناكم أكثر نفيرا إن أحسنتم أحسنتم لأنفسكم وإن أسأتم فلها فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة ليسوءوا وجوهكم وليدخلوا المسجد كما دخلوه أول مرة وليتبروا ما علوا تتبيرا عسى ربكم أن يرحمكم وإن عدتم عدنا وجعلنا جهنم للكافرين حصيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Let's have another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before we continue the program, inshallah, just a few announcements. We still have the goal for $70,000 this year for the month of Muharram. Please donate generously. Inshallah, with Sheikh Hassanain Sajjad, with Sheikh Hassanain Qasim Ali, we will have a Sahif al-Sajjadiyya program this coming weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Please sign up, inshallah. It's going to be a very beneficial event for everybody. And inshallah, we're also doing an information update. They sent a link on email and on WhatsApp. Please, if you can go on that link and just re-update your information. If you don't know how, then please go to the desk where Brother Arif and Brother Bakr sit, and inshallah, we will do it for you. Tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, is the night of Muslim ibn Aqil. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. He is the one who died like Imam al-Hussein. مات غريبا عن دياره ومات عطشانا في حكومة عمه. He died in the city of his uncle in Kufa, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi ta'ala alayh. There's the poet, he has a conversation between Fatima alayhi salam and Muslim. قال لها يا زهراء يا أمي آني مسلم افتدما هذا خويا وحبيبي هذا مفتاح الأئمة. He says, O Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Ummi, O Zahra, my mother, I am Muslim, I am sacrificing my blood for who? For Imam al-Hussein. He is my brother and my Habibi, he is my beloved Hussein. He is the keys to the rest of the Imam alayhimus salam. أضحى مسلما وحيدا في أزقة الكوفة وشوارعها. He, Muslim, was alone in the streets of Kufa with no Ansar until he knocked on a door asking for water. أيها المؤمنون, this woman, her name was طوعة. May Allah, خلد الله اسمها في مسيرة الحسين. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make her name eternal in the masira, in the remembering of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. For truly, she was the one who gave water to Muslim and was the one who helped Muslim ibn Aqil in his time of need. يا طاعة اليوم ما تحصل سلامة أوصيك التالب هالليلة طب اليتامى إذا جاءت ابنتي حميدة قبليها احضنيها وقولي لها إن أباك يحبك كثيرا. He tells her, there's no safety for me, O Taw'a, nor safety for my orphan Hamida. Hamida was his daughter, his beloved daughter, and she was the one who cried for Muslim ibn Aqil, and because her father died and also her two brothers were also killed by the Mal'uneen, those who were in charge of Kufa at the time. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inshallah, let's invite فضيلة الشيخ محمد مهدي مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إلهنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين المطهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Dear brothers and respected sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It is narrated that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, as he was leaving Medina, he called for a pen and paper and he wrote this letter. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim min al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib ila Bani Hashim. From Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib to all of the Banu Hashim. Amma ba'ad فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ لَحِقَ بِي مِنْكُمْ استشهد. Whoever joins with me, whoever joins this caravan of mine is going to be martyred. وَمَنْ تَخَلَّفَ لَمْ يَبْلُغْ مَبْلَغَ الْفَتْحِ. But, so if you join Hussein ibn Ali, at least at that time, you were going to be martyred. You're going to die. But he has a warning that whoever doesn't join me is not going to succeed. And so kind of keeping that in mind, trying to take a lesson from that, trying to see how that applies to our own lives, we've been trying to talk about different practical pieces of advice that we can kind of work on in our lives to become followers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to join that symbolic or metaphorical caravan of Imam Hussein. We talked about, first of all, giving thanks, and then we talked about being somebody who thinks, has some time in our day where we ponder upon ourselves, ponder upon God's will, God's signs, ponder upon what we're doing. Are we making mistakes? God forbid. If we are, then we have to think about how we can fix those mistakes. And then we talked a little bit, and the third point was about tafweed, and that concept of how we have to do what our responsibility is and then try to entrust our affairs to Allah Ta'ala. So before I move on today to the fourth point, which we kind of started, I think, yesterday, that I said the fourth thing we want to talk about is ibadah. That to be a follower of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we have to be people who take ibadah seriously. People who give importance to worshipping Allah in our lives. Okay? But before that, I just wanted to again kind of emphasize the importance of this second point, that if we are not somebody who thinks, we are not somebody who tries to seek out what our mistakes are, we are never going to progress in our life. Unfortunately, a lot of people, if you go around and you look at them, you talk to them, you see that they live their lives without much thought with regards to what they're doing, where they're going, how they could improve. Sometimes even there's not even any kind of recognition of the fact that, God forbid, we need to improve. I mean, of course we need to improve. The fact that there's no recognition of that is wrong. God forbid, it shouldn't be the case. So this is extremely important. I mentioned yesterday that one of the things we can do to somehow guide our thoughts, to be people who think, and then we should somehow be thinking appropriately and correctly. This is also a delicate matter that, somebody, God forbid, who is engulfed in sin, somebody who is committing a lot of sins, who has reached, God forbid, a level of impurity, sometimes shaitan can mess with their thoughts as well. And they may be using their thoughts, but somehow using their thoughts to do evil things, to come to incorrect conclusions. We have discussions in the Holy Quran about how God sometimes, because of a person's sin, He appoints a shaitan that is somehow assigned to a certain person. And that shaitan is always somehow deceiving, tricking, waswasa, putting waswasa in the mind of this person. So one kind of piece of advice that I gave you, dear brothers, yesterday, and dear brothers and sisters, is that we all need to put aside time to learn our religion, our aqa'id. If we take a course, ideally a course that has got a strong, rational, logical backing to it, but a course in beliefs that is intellectually proving the existence of God, the perfection of God, the need for sharia, the fact that we have a hereafter that we are going to be raised and going to, basically. By somehow learning the appropriate theology, this would somehow also help us in using our thought process appropriately. I don't want to dwell upon this second point about thinking too much, but basically the conclusion that I want to make here with regards to this aspect of being somebody who thinks is that thought process, that intellect that God has given us, should lead us to realize that we all have a certain purpose in life. God has created everything in this universe with a certain goal, with a certain purpose. Even that apple that you eat was created for that purpose, that you would eat it and you would get energy from eating it, and then you would serve Allah with that energy. So even we have a purpose, and the difference is that a human being gets to choose. Is he going to fulfill that purpose or not? That apple didn't get to choose, right? It was just picked up and eaten. It grew the way it was going to grow. An animal just follows its instincts without having an intellect. It doesn't have that level of complexity that a human being has. So human beings have been created, and God has given us this path in life. The path is nothing other than the sharia, other than servitude to Allah, which again we kind of indicated, I think, yesterday, that وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. God created us, and then He somehow expects us to all use our life, use our abilities to be a humble servant before Him, to choose with our own free will to obey Him. Okay? And part of that path of obedience is also has this concept of the awliya of Allah, those perfect guides, those ma'asumeen that God put to be our role models, to be the ones who themselves have attained the highest possible level, and then they are now the kind of intermediary, that they are the ones who teach us what Allah wants us to learn. They are the ones who hold our hand and take us forward. We need to connect to them. We need to ask them for help. We need to go and learn what they have taught us. Of course, the foremost of them is the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But within those awliya, those ma'asumeen, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam has a very special role. And so here I just wanted to make one point about the importance of Imam Hussein alayhi salam before we move on to the fourth kind of practical piece of advice we wanted to talk about today. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam, sometimes we might wonder, why is there so much emphasis on his remembrance, on crying for him, some of the ahadith of which I narrated to you guys? Why is there so much importance in his ziyarah, which we will talk about in the upcoming nights perhaps? Why is there so much, why did all the ma'asumeen, even prophets of Allah, maybe again we will get a chance to recount Adam, Musa, other prophets, they are narrated to have cried over the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's not to say that Imam Hussein alayhi salam's position is higher than that of the Prophet or higher than that of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. No. But rather, there is some difference there because of how Imam Hussein alayhi salam, in his life, he went through certain tests and he manifested a certain responsibility that even his grandfather sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not have that responsibility. He was the one who God had destined that he had to save Islam. Islam was going down the wrong course, and had it not been for his stand that he took in Karbala, Islam would have totally been lost altogether. Okay, so we have a verse of Quran, وَلِكُلٍّ دَرَجَاتٌ مِمَّا عَمِلُوا, that everybody is given a station based on what they do in this world. And that even applies to the awliya, to the ma'asumeen. Amongst the ma'asumeen, that's not to say that Imam Hussein is higher than the Prophet. No, but there is a difference that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had a certain role, and he has till now, he plays a certain role in the universe that is unique to him. And that's why we see all of these amazing teachings and ahadith about crying for Imam Hussein, remembering Imam Hussein, doing ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Today, just very quickly in that regard, I thought I would mention a little bit about the importance and the blessing in the turba of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's a very amazing thing that we have all of these ahadith that talk about how the turba, the clay, the soil of Karbala is very special, is very blessed because of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, because of the pure blood that was spilled over there. For example, we have one hadith that talks about, and this even our maraji, if we go to the chapter of ahkam that deals with food, we will see that this is also reflected there in the ahkam that the maraji write. We have a hadith that says to eat soil is haram, like other haram kinds of food, like blood, like pork. It's totally haram. إِلَّا طِينَ قَبْرِ الْحُسَيْنِ alayhi salam. Except there's one exception. There's one time where we are allowed to eat soil. We are allowed to eat teen, clay, soil. When is that? That is the clay of the qabr of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. For verily the hadith says, in it is a shifa for every sickness. And in that there is a security from every fear. Okay, so we have all these kinds of hadith about the blessing in the soil of Imam Hussein, that if you somebody with the right ma'rifah, if they take a small amount of it and they're sick, it will cure their sickness. Or for example, if you make a tasbih, we call that rosary, right? Tasbih, although maybe the correct Arabic word would not be tasbih. Tasbih is actually the action of glorifying Allah. Anyways, if you make a tasbih out of the clay of Karbala, there is more reward for doing tasbih with that tasbih. Okay, so we have again a hadith about that. One last incident I'll narrate, that during the time of the 10th Imam alayhi salam, there was a very, very bad caliph, Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, la'anatullah alayhi. This Mutawakkil had a deep animosity to the Imams and to the Ahlul Bayt. He oppressed, tortured, killed a lot of the Shia. One of the things that Mutawakkil did was he destroyed the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And he put like soldiers to keep watch that no Shia would come. Still, Shia risked their lives to go for ziyarah, by the way. But anyways, he destroyed the grave, and for 40 days, made water flow over the grave of Imam Hussein until the water finally went into the earth. So the grave was totally somehow erased. It is narrated in books of history that there was a Shia, a Bedouin Arab who went to that blessed land during the time of Mutawakkil, or after this had happened. And he went and he started picking up the clay and smelling it, and then walking over a little bit further and picking it up and smelling it, until finally he came to the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And when he smelt it, he recognized that this was the grave of the Imam. And he said, بِأَبِي وَأُمِّي مَنْ كَانَ أَطْيَبَكَ مَا كَانَ أَطْيَبَكَ وَأَطْيَبَ قَبْرِكَ وَتُرْبَتِكَ. He said that, may my mother and father be sacrificed for you, O Hussein. That how beautiful is the smell of your turab, of your khak, your clay. And then he recited some poetry. أَرَادُوا لِيُخْفُوا قَبْرَهُ عَنْ وَلِيِّهِ وطيب تراب القبر دل على القبر. He wrote some poetry, he recited some poetry that they wanted to somehow hide the grave of the Imam, but the smell, the beautiful smell that it had was enough to somehow identify it. Anyways, these are all just some points that I wanted to mention. Again, brothers and sisters, as I've been saying in these nights, it behooves us to really thank Allah. We really need to thank Allah. However much we thank Allah, it is little that we have this opportunity to gather together and remember Imam Hussein, and inshallah try to connect to Imam Hussein in these nights. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, so as I was saying, the fourth point that we wanted to take from the teachings of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, from the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt of the Quran, that inshallah we can try to work on, is that we want to be sure that we are people who take worship seriously in our lives. We want to be people who are Ahle Ibadat. And we talked a little bit about what Ibadat means yesterday. Ibadat, I mean these specific rituals that we have in Islam. Not just the fundamental requirement of servitude to God. Okay, that's the basic that all of us need to be working on. That in all of our life, in our personal life, our economic life, our work life, we want to know what our responsibility is, that we are not disobeying God. That's definitely very important. In fact, that's the main responsibility we have. But part of that, and part of it is a requirement, part of it is somehow we can say mustahab, is that we engage in ritual worship. That we have time in our day where we spend talking to God, praying, reciting dua, asking for forgiveness. On the evening of the eve of Ashura, you all know the story that there was the time that the enemy, the army of Yazid, came to the camp of Imam Hussein wanting to start a fight. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he tells Hazrat Abbas, Ya Abbas, irkab binafsi ant. Oh, may I be sacrificed. This is Imam Hussein telling Abbas alayhi salam that, may I be sacrificed for you. Oh Abbas, go and check. What is it that they are coming for? So a conversation happens between Abbas alayhi salam and the army. And he tells them that, let me go talk to Imam Hussein. They say that, no, we've come to give you the ultimatum. Either you guys surrender and give bay'ah, or we're going to fight. At that time, Imam Hussein alayhi salam sends Hazrat Abbas to go tell them that, give us one night respite. Okay, let us fight tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. فَإِنِ اسْتَطَعْتَ أَن تُؤَخِّرَهُم. He tells Abbas alayhi salam that if you can, let them delay إِلَى غَدْوَةٍ, until the morning. وَتَدْفَعَهُمْ عَنَّا الْعَشِيَّةِ. Let them not come tonight. لَعَلَّنَا نُصَلِّي لِرَبِّنَا اللَّيْلَةَ وَنَدْعُوهُ وَنَسْتَغْفِرُهُ فهو يعلم أني قد كنت أحب الصلاة له وتلاوة كتابه وكثرة الدعاء والاستغفار. Imam Hussein says that, go ask them for one night respite. Why? Now there may have been another wisdom here, but apparently what he is saying is that I want this night to pray, to do dua to Allah, to ask for forgiveness from Allah. These three things, he says, God verily knows that I love to do these. I love to read the Quran. I love to pray. I love to ask for forgiveness. I love to do dua. So inshallah, we also want to briefly comment upon these things, about the importance of spending time in our life to seek forgiveness from God, to do dua. These are the two that we want to talk about today if we have time. And then tomorrow we'll talk more about salat and maybe Quran as well. So first of all, istighfar. Okay, istighfar, the idea of somehow asking God for forgiveness. Now, I made a point a few days ago that, again, I want to reiterate that the fundamental responsibility we have is to walk the walk as a servant of Allah, to live a life of obedience. And so even when it comes to istighfar, so istighfar, the idea of feeling bad for our mistakes, turning back to Allah, tawbah or istighfar, the subtle differences here. Istighfar maybe is the asking for forgiveness, Whereas the idea of going back to God is tawbah. Okay? So this idea, the fundamental kind of responsibility we have is to make sure we have, for example, let's say I didn't pray for some time. I didn't give my khums for some time. I stole some money from somebody. My main responsibility here, in addition to feeling bad and having remorse in my heart, my main responsibility is to make amends for what I did, right? To do the qada. If I haven't paid khums for many years, I can work it out with the office of my marja'. I don't need to worry that, okay, I don't have all this money to pay khums in one go. No, I can tell the office of the marja' that for 10 years I didn't pay khums and I'm not able to pay it all back right now. Let's make an agreement where slowly I'll pay it back. Or if I didn't pray, I need to make a plan to do the qada prayers that I didn't pray. If I stole money from somebody, I need to somehow give that money back to him. If he has died, I need to give it to his children. If I can't find him, I need to somehow, for example, there's things in fiqh, for example, raddu madalim, you give sadaqah on behalf of that person. Anyways, there is a certain kind of fiqhi obligation I have to make amends for my sins that I have committed. So that's the main thing. But beyond that, what we are talking about right now is the aspect of somehow talking to God. That ritual aspect of sitting on the musalla, the prayer mat, and asking for forgiveness. Having a tasbih, saying astaghfirullah. This is what we are talking about. That even this is something extremely important. This idea of somehow talking to God, connecting to God in a very clear way with attention and by putting aside time to do that. That is absolutely necessary. You see, my dear brothers and sisters, we all in our lives, there will come times where we are going to be tested. And one thing that inshallah can help us when we are tested, when that test of anger or desire or something difficult comes in our life, one thing that inshallah will help us at that time is that connection that we established with Allah. If we were somebody that was regularly talking to God, regularly turning back to God, then we can expect that God will also help us. And we have ahadith that indicate that as well. So having that connection to God will inshallah save us when the difficult tests come in life. There's a story that somebody once went to Ayatollah Bahjat. May Allah bless him and may Allah bless all of our maraji' and all the awliya of Allah. Please recite a salawat for all of them. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala. So somebody once went to Ayatollah Bahjat and he asked Ayatollah Bahjat that give me some amal that I should be doing. Maybe he was expecting some kind of complicated namaz that's going to take like the whole night or some long dua. Ayatollah Bahjat told him to do istighfar. And so he didn't take it very seriously. He thought like, okay, this is something that everybody knows how to do. It's not a big deal. And he didn't really act on that advice of Ayatollah Bahjat. Rahmatullah alayh. And then he had a dream one night where he was falling down from a cliff. And in the middle of this fall, he remembered in his dream that, oh, let me do that advice that Ayatollah Bahjat told me. And he started to do istighfar in his dream. And then in his dream, all of a sudden, somebody kind of caught him and put him gently down on the ground. So he didn't hit the ground hard as he was falling. And when he woke up, he went and recounted this dream to Ayatollah Bahjat, and Ayatollah Bahjat smiled. And he said, yes, this is the reality. This is how istighfar is really like. So istighfar, my dear brothers and sisters, is like a medicine for the sickness of our heart. It is an opportunity, rather it is an obligation that we have. That because we have got, all of us have our own faults. As we'll see maybe tomorrow, if not today, even prophets of Allah would do istighfar. Even they recognized that there were higher levels of closeness to Allah that they could attain, and the way for them to attain that was by doing istighfar. So all of us have a lot to work on, and all of us need to somehow take advantage of this huge blessing that God has given us, where we have the opportunity to talk to Him, to seek His forgiveness, and to do dua and istighfar. Okay, so those were a few points about istighfar. One final point I thought I would mention, a practical piece of advice that teachers of akhlaq give. One of the very powerful, very strong, very effective ways of seeking forgiveness is a specific amal that has been narrated in hadith, a specific kind of namaz. That if you go to the a'mal, the actions that are recommended for the lunar month of Dhul Qa'dah. So for example, there's a very important book of mustahabbat, of a'mal, called Mafatihul Jinan. I would highly, highly recommend all of you, dear brothers and sisters, to purchase this book if you don't have it. To read this book from time to time. It's a bit of a big book, but slowly, slowly, by putting aside time, getting familiar with it, this book is a very phenomenal, very amazing work that Sheikh Abbas Qummi, a scholar who didn't live very long ago, like maybe 100 years ago or so, even less than 100 years ago, he basically went to all the books of hadith and the earlier, more difficult, more complicated, more big books of a'mal and hadith, and he compiled this relatively smaller book that has a lot of the mustahabbat that we have from the Ahlul Bayt, a lot of the du'as, a lot of the a'mal. He has sections based on the year, that what should we do in the month of Ramadan, what should we do in Rajab. He has sections to do with ziyarah, what should we do when we go to the ziyarah of Karbala, what are the etiquette of ziyarah. It's a beautiful, very amazing book where, generally speaking, whatever he has brought it from the ahadith. He's not somebody who writes much himself. He just compiled and very beautifully organized and maybe at times summarized the contents of the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt. So for example, if you go to that book in the A'mal of Dhul Qa'dah, there is one specific way to do tawbah, where you do ghusl and then you pray a 4 rakat prayer. It's not that long, but you can go refer to it. And this is something that the hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which teaches us this a'mal, it says that it's not limited to the month of Dhul Qa'dah. You can do it any time of the year, and it is a very powerful way to seek forgiveness from Allah. Okay, so that was a little bit about istighfar. I wanted to talk a bit about dua, but I think let's leave it. Inshallah, we'll talk about dua tomorrow. For now, let us move to the musibah, inshallah. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we get the opportunity in our lives to work on these teachings, to become people of purity and worship. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that by the sake of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he fixes these problems that we have, our internal problems, our external problems, the problems that the ummah is facing, the oppression that the ummah is facing in Palestine and everywhere, and also our own internal problems of impurity and sin and distance from Allah, distance from Imam. Inshallah, we pray that Allah, the Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Allah Ta'ala, fix all of these problems of ours. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Allah, how heavenly is your name, Aba Abdillah, the cure to every fear and pain, Aba Abdillah. The visitor of Karbala has Hajj and Umrah granted. For sure, you are the Kaaba of love, Aba Abdillah. Dear brothers and sisters, today again, like the last two nights, we want to remember some of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Inshallah, from tomorrow onwards, we will now move then to the family, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Today we want to remember two of the elderly companions that had a very special status amongst the companions because of their age. Both of them were apparently from the same tribe of Banu Asad. They were friends, they were family members. Their names were Muslim bin Awsaja and Habib ibn Madahir. First, a little bit about Muslim. Muslim was a very elderly individual. He was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was somebody who had fought very bravely in some of the Muslim conquests. In the conquest of Azerbaijan, he was present. He was somebody who during the uprising of Mukhtar, he had a very important role. He was helping Mukhtar. He was gathering money, gathering weapons, taking bay'ah on behalf of on behalf of Muslim bin Aqil, not Mukhtar, Muslim bin Aqil. On the day of Ashura, let us go and see what happened. The time came when Muslim bin Awsaja was fighting bravely. He goes into the battlefield. In tas'alu anni fa inni dhu libad. Libad is the mane of a lion. All of these warriors, generally speaking, we'll see, they all would have this poetry that they would go into the battlefield and introduce who they are. He says, if you want to know who I am a lion. Min far'i qawmin min dhara bani asad. فمن بغانا حائد عن الرشاد وكافر بدين جبار صمد. He says, whoever oppresses us has turned away from the guidance. Whoever oppresses us is a kafir. He fights, but he is an old man. The time comes that he falls upon the earth. As the dust settles, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, along with Habib, his friend, they both come to Muslim while Muslim is breathing his last. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he says, Rahimaka Rabbuka ya Muslim bin Awsaja. And then he recites a verse of Quran, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. He does dua, he says, may Allah have mercy on you, O Muslim. At that time, Habib comes close to his friend Muslim and he tells Muslim, it is very difficult for me to see you in this state, O Muslim, but have glad tidings that you are going to paradise. Muslim also does dua for Habib. Then Habib tells Muslim, Habib tells Muslim that, O Muslim, if it was not for the case that I knew I am about to follow you, very shortly I too will be killed, then I would have loved that you give me your wasiyah. I would have loved to hear what is your will in these last moments of your life. Muslim has a will. He tells Habib, Bal ana usika bihadha rahimakallah. He points at Imam Hussein and he tells Habib, oh Habib, my will is that you take care of Hussein, that you don't allow him to die before you give your life. And Habib says, Af'alu wa rabbil Kaaba. This was Muslim. May Allah's blessings be upon Muslim. Now let us go to Habib. Habib was also an elderly individual. There is a difference of opinion as to whether he was a companion of the Holy Prophet or not. But undoubtedly Habib was somebody who was very close to Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He was from that close circle of the Imam's companions, people like Mitham at-Tammar and Habib. They had access to some of the secrets of Imam Ali alayhi salam. This was Habib. Habib was a hafidh of the Quran. There is a narration that says that in one night he used to read the entire Quran. That may seem hard for us to believe, but it is possible for somebody who is a hafidh, for somebody who can read very quickly. Within maybe 8 hours, 6, 7 hours, they can read the entire Quran. And so about Habib, it is mentioned that he used to do that. The time came on the Asr of Ashura that one of the other companions looks up to the sky. His name was Abu Thumama. He looks up to the sky and he sees that it is the time of prayer. He comes to Imam al-Hussein. He says, "Oh, Aba Abdullah, may my soul be sacrificed for you. By Allah, I don't want to be killed until I have prayed. وأحب أن ألقى ربي وقد صليت هذه الصلاة." Imam Hussein alayhi salam does dua for him that may Allah make you from those people who pray. At that time, the companions of Imam Hussein tells them that go ask for some respite. Go ask the enemy that let us say our prayers. The wretched enemy army of Yazid, they say, no, your prayers will not be accepted. At this time, Habib goes into the battlefield enraged. He says, لا تقبل زعمت الصلاة من آل رسول الله وتقبل منك. And then he says something rude to the enemy. He says, you think that your prayers are going to be accepted and the prayers of the son of the Prophet are not going to be? At this time now, Habib is in the battlefield. He is fighting. He is saying his own poetry. أنا حبيب وأبي مظاهر فارس هيجاء وحرب تسعر. He's introducing himself, saying who he is. But again, he is an old man. Despite his brave fighting, he kills more than 60 of the enemy. But the time comes that two people, one of them hits him on his head, and another one comes and pierces him with a spear. Habib falls. There is an argument that ensues between these two wretched individuals as to who is the killer of Habib. You see, this is how filthy these people were. They wanted to show that we were the ones who killed Hussein's companions so that they would get a prize from Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, la'natullahi alayh. It is narrated that the killer of Habib, he had the blessed head of Habib attached to his horse as he was going in Kufa, going to the castle of Ubaidullah. At that time, there was a young boy. This is the son of Habib, Qasim. He was a very young boy, not even baligh. There is a young boy that is watching this man as he goes into the castle of Ubaidullah and he comes out. This wretched man asks this young boy, what's the deal? Why are you looking at me like this? He says, this head that you have with you, this is the head of my father. Won't you give it to me so that I can bury it? But this is how wretched these individuals were, that he refuses to give the head of Habib to Habib's son. Dear brothers and sisters, one more story. This is a very tragic story. There is an account in the Maqtal, in the books of the tragedy of Karbala. There is an account of a very young boy. According to some of the historians, they think that this young boy is the son of Muslim bin Awsaja, who we mentioned a few minutes earlier. This young boy, it's said that his mother comes to him and tells him, oh my son, go and fight for Hussein, go and defend the son of the Prophet of Allah. As this young boy is going out into the battlefield, Hussein alayhi salam stops him. He tells his companions, stop him. He is a young boy. His father has already been killed. Maybe his mother doesn't want him to go. But that young boy tells Hussein, no, it is my mother that has sent me. I was quoting some of the poetry before and saying that all the companions, when they would go, they would proudly introduce who they are. But this is a young boy. He doesn't introduce himself. Look at his poetry. He says, Amiri Husaynun wa na'mal amir, surur fuadil, bashirin nadir. He is just talking about Hussein. He is in love with none other than Hussein. He goes into the battlefield proudly telling the enemy that my Amir is Hussein. What a good Amir, what a good prince, what a good leader I have. The one who was the happiness of the Prophet of Allah. Aliyun wa Fatima walida, fahal ta'lamun lahu min nadir. There's nobody like my Amir. There's nobody like Hussein. Ali and Fatima are his parents. He goes and he fights. The time comes that he is killed. His head is cut and it is thrown back to the army of Hussein. The mother of this young boy picks up the head and she addresses it and she says, Ahsanta ya bunay. She says, well done, O my son. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد. أزور سيدي ومولاي أزور سيدي ومولاي أبا عبد الله الحسين أصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي وكل المؤمنين والمؤمنات قربة إلى الله تعالى. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها، ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. واشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسوله إني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائكم. عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي وعلى أولاده وعلى أصحابه وعلى بالفضل العباس وعلى زينب بنت أمير المؤمنين ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن لوليك صلواتك عليه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا حتى أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الفاتحة فعوض مرحومين عن سيد رضا الحسيني وثلاث صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers, if you guys would like to stay for a quick Q&A with Sheikh Mahdi Qasim Ali before Salah, let's use our time wisely, inshallah.
Officially, just sit here. Huh?
Yeah, non-official, yeah. So inshallah, just gather around the Sheikh and we can have an informal Q&A with the Sheikh.